You never had a head for success, my dad told me. Not long after, I was trending nationwide. I'd just been announced as one of the youngest male founders on Wall Street. At the family barbecue, everyone went silent when I rolled up in my Ferrari. My name is Joshua Langford. I'm 23 years old, and I built a financial technology startup from scratch in Charleston, South Carolina. Where I'm from, success means calloused hands and a sunburned neck. My father, Nathan, ran a landscaping business for 30 years and measured a man's worth by physical labor. When I chose finance over following him into the family business, the disappointment in his eyes cut deeper than any shovel could dig. For 3 years, I'd been working on an algorithm that could predict market trends better than the big firms. Nights, weekends, holidays, all spent hunched over my laptop while my friends were out living their lives. My dad would walk past my room, shake his head, and mutter something about boys playing with computers. Each time, I'd work another hour just to prove him wrong. Last month, I overheard him talking to my uncle at our family dinner. Joshua will be back mowing lawns by summer, he said, laughing. That boy couldn't sell water in a desert. I didn't say anything, just ate my dinner, helped clean up, and drove back to my apartment to finalize the biggest deal of my life. I grew up watching my father build his landscaping company from a single truck to a fleet of 20. Every summer from age 12, I worked for him, cutting grass, planting trees, hauling mulch under the Carolina sun. He taught me the value of hard work. But somewhere along the way, he confused hard work with hard labor. When I got accepted to University of South Carolina's business program, he barely acknowledged it. College boys think they know everything until they meet the real world, he said, handing me a $20 bill for the road. That was his version of a send-off. My mother, Denise, was different. She slipped me $500 she'd saved from her teaching salary and whispered, "Go make something of yourself that makes you happy." She never said it in front of my dad. During sophomore year, I developed an algorithm that caught the attention of one of my professors. This could revolutionize how regular people invest, he told me. I dropped out the next semester to focus on building it into something real. When I called home to explain, my mother cried. My father hung up. For the next 2 years, I lived off ramen and worked out of a tiny apartment with 2 roommates. One venture capitalist after another turned me down. Too young, they said. Not enough experience. Each rejection email I'd print out and tape to my wall, not as motivation, as a reminder of who didn't believe in me. Thomas Blake, my roommate from freshman year, stuck by me. He'd bring me food when I forgot to eat, proofread my pitches, and never once questioned whether I'd make it. "You're the smartest person I know," he'd say. "Just don't forget us little people when you're rich." Meanwhile, my father's comments grew sharper. At Thanksgiving, he introduced me to his clients as my son, who's still figuring things out. At Christmas, he suggested I apply for a manager position at his company since that computer thing isn't working out. I noticed how he'd suddenly changed the subject whenever I tried to explain my work. How he'd interrupt me mid-sentence to point out a neighbor's nicely manicured lawn. How he never once asked to see what I was building. On my 23rd birthday, I got an email from Blackwater Capital, one of the largest hedge funds on the East Coast. They wanted to license my technology exclusively for $14 million. I read the email 17 times standing in my kitchen, coffee growing cold in my hand. I called Thomas first. He screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Then I called my mother. She cried again, but different tears this time. I didn't call my father. 3 days later, I signed the contracts in New York. The Blackwater executives took me to dinner at a restaurant where the menu had no prices. The CEO, a woman named Patricia Donovan, raised her glass. "To the future of finance," she said. Everyone clinked glasses. I smiled, but all I could think about was my father's voice. "Pathetic boy, you never had a head for success." That night in my hotel room, I got a text from my cousin Evan, the only person in my family who ever showed interest in what I was building. "Just saw the Wall Street Journal article. Holy Josh, you're famous." I opened my laptop. There it was. My face, my company, my story splashed across financial news sites. 23-year-old dropout lands 8-figure deal with Wall Street giant. The article mentioned my age 3 times as if it were the most remarkable thing about me. I closed the laptop and stared out at the New York skyline. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I just felt clear, like fog lifting off the harbor back home. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next morning, I walked into a Ferrari dealership wearing jeans and a t-shirt. The salesman ignored me until I mentioned the price range I was considering. 2 hours later, I drove out in a red Ferrari Roma. Not because I particularly wanted one, but because I needed a message that couldn't be misinterpreted. I didn't call ahead before driving home to Charleston. I knew my father's annual Memorial Day barbecue would be happening, the one where he invited all his clients, employees, and extended family to show off his success. I timed my arrival for exactly 2 o'clock when everyone would be gathered in the backyard. As I pulled into the driveway, the rumble of the engine drew eyes before the car was even visible. I parked next to my father's pickup truck, the one he'd always been so proud of, and took a deep breath. This wasn't about revenge. This was about finally being seen. I stepped into the backyard carrying nothing but my car keys. The conversation stopped like someone had hit a pause button. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father stood at the grill, spatula in mid-flip. "Sorry I'm late," I said, walking toward him. Traffic from New York was terrible. He recovered quickly, putting on the smile he used for clients. "Well, look who decided to grace us with his presence." He clapped me on the shoulder too hard. "Whose car did you borrow to make that entrance, son?" The guests laughed. "I didn't. It's mine," I said quietly. "Bought it yesterday, right?" He nodded, winking at Uncle Frank. "And I'm buying a private jet next week." More laughter. I pulled the title from my back pocket and handed it to him. His face changed as he read it. He folded it carefully and handed it back. "Must be nice to have rich friends who trust you with their toys," he said, turning back to the grill. "Grab a plate. Your mother made potato salad." Throughout the afternoon, I tried to talk to him. Really talk. Each time he deflected. When I mentioned the deal, he changed the subject to landscaping contracts. When I tried to explain the technology, he suddenly needed to refill the cooler. When his business partner asked me about the Wall Street Journal article, my father interrupted. "Don't believe everything you read, Pete. Journalists exaggerate everything these days." By evening, most guests had left. I found my father in his office doing paperwork like he always did after hosting. "Dad, we need to talk about what's happening with my company." He didn't look up. "There's nothing to talk about. You got lucky with some computer thing. Don't think this makes you special. $14 million isn't luck," I said, my voice steady. He finally looked at me, eyes narrow. "You know what built this family? 40 years of breaking my back. Not sitting in a room pressing buttons. Not making up numbers on a screen." He pointed to a photo on his wall, him at 20 standing next to his first truck. "That's real work. That's real success. What I built is real, too." "Is it?" He leaned forward. "Let me tell you something, Joshua. I've seen your type before. Flash in the pan. Success. You'll blow through that money in a year and those Wall Street sharks will spit you out when they're done with you. And then where will you be?" I didn't answer. "You'll be right back here," he continued, "begging for a job, and I'll have to explain to everyone why my son couldn't hack it in the real world." I left his office without another word. In the kitchen, my mother was washing dishes. She turned, drying her hands. "He's proud of you," she said softly. "He just doesn't know how to show it." I shook my head. "No, Mom. He's not proud. He's threatened." The next morning, I got a call from my cousin Evan. "Uncle Nathan's telling everyone your deal fell through and you lied about everything." He said, "You rented that car to show off." Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, just certainty. I spent the next week in Charleston staying at a hotel downtown rather than at my parents' house. I met with lawyers, financial advisors, and the team I was building, but in the background, I was hearing things about my father, about me, about my company. Thomas texted me, "Your dad came by the apartment looking for you. Asked a bunch of questions about where the money's going." My aunt called. "Nathan told everyone at church that you're in some kind of legal trouble with those New York people. Is everything okay?" Even Patricia from Blackwater reached out, just checking in. Someone claiming to be your father called our office asking for details about our agreement. Obviously, we didn't provide any. I drove to my parents' house on a Tuesday afternoon when I knew my father would be working. My mother let me in. Nervous energy in her movements as she made coffee. "Mom, what's going on with Dad?" She sat down, hands wrapped around her mug. "He's worried about you, that's all. Worried enough to tell people I'm a liar? Worried enough to call my business partners?" She looked down. "You have to understand your success. It challenges everything he's built his identity around. That's not my problem." "No," she agreed quietly. "But he's making it your problem." She hesitated. "There's something else. The business is struggling. Has been for years. The new landscaping chains are undercutting his prices. He can't compete." The revelation hit me harder than I expected. "Why didn't he tell me?" "Pride," she said simply. "The same reason he can't celebrate your success. In his mind, if he admits your way worked, it means his way failed." I left my mother with a promise to fix things. But as I drove away, I realized the problem went deeper than I thought. This wasn't just about my father's pride. It was about his fear. Fear that I represented a future that had no place for men like him. That evening, I called Uncle Frank, my father's younger brother and business partner. We met at a bar downtown. "He remortgaged the house," Frank told me, staring into his beer. "3 years ago. Put everything into the business. New trucks, new equipment, trying to keep up with the big companies. It's not working." "Why are you telling me this?" Frank looked up. "Because yesterday he asked me if I thought you'd be willing to invest your computer money in the landscaping business. He's planning to approach you about it." I sat back. He doesn't believe my success is real, but he wants my money. He believes it's real. He just can't admit it. Frank sighed. "Look, your father is a proud man. He built something from nothing, but the world changed and he didn't." On my way home, I drove past my father's business. The lights were still on. I parked across the street and watched him through the window, hunched over paperwork. For a moment, I saw him clearly, not as my father, but as a man running out of options, clinging to a past that was disappearing. I realized then that his attacks on me weren't just about resenting my success. They were about using me to explain his failure. If my way was wrong, then his way wasn't failing. It was just underappreciated in a world that no longer valued real work. The next morning, I received a text from him. "Need to discuss business opportunity. Dinner tomorrow, 7 p.m. I texted back one word. Yes, I didn't go to dinner. Instead, I spent the day setting things in motion. First, I called Patricia at Blackwater. "I need information on landscaping companies in the Charleston area, specifically which ones are acquisition targets and which are expanding." By noon, I had a list of the 3 biggest players in the region. By 3, I had meetings scheduled with 2 of them. Next, I called a commercial real estate agent. "I'm looking for properties suitable for a tech incubator, preferably in Charleston's old industrial district." The following morning, I met with Greenscape Enterprises, the largest landscaping company in the state. The owner, Harold Jenkins, was expanding aggressively. "We've had our eye on Langford Landscaping for a while," he admitted after I explained my interest. "Prime service area, loyal customer base, but Nathan won't even take my calls." "What if I could change that?" I asked. By evening, I had an offer in writing. Greenscape would buy my father's company for $1. $2 million and twice what it was currently worth on paper, with a 5-year employment contract for my father as a regional manager. His employees would all keep their jobs with improved benefits. I also had a lease signed on a 15,000 QFT warehouse space that I was converting into the headquarters for my new company. I was bringing my operation back to Charleston. The final piece came together when I hired Evan, who had just graduated with a business degree, as my chief operating officer. "Are you serious?" he asked when I made the offer. "I've never run anything." "Neither had I told him. "But you believe in what we're building. That's what matters." 3 days after missing the dinner with my father, I still hadn't returned his increasingly irritated messages. Instead, I walked into his office unannounced, carrying a folder. He looked up, anger flashing across his face. "So you decided to grace me with your presence." After standing me up, I placed the folder on his desk. "This is more important than dinner." "What is this?" "Your big investment in my company." His tone was mocking. "No, it's an acquisition offer from Greenscape. They want to buy Langford Landscaping." The color drained from his face. "You went behind my back." "I went ahead of you," I corrected. "The business is failing, Dad. You and I both know it. This offer keeps your legacy intact. Your employees keep their jobs. You get to stay on as regional manager with profit sharing. So that's your plan? Sweep in with your Wall Street connections and take over the business I built." His voice was rising. I shook my head. "The business you built is dying. This saves it." He stood up, trembling slightly. "Get out." "There's one more thing," I said, reaching into my jacket. I placed a key on his desk. "This is for you." He stared at it. "What's this supposed to be?" "It's the key to my Ferrari. Consider it a gift." His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I don't want your charity." "It's not charity. It's an advance." I headed for the door, then turned back. "The offer expires in 48 hours. After that, Greenscape approaches your competitors. Think about your employees, Dad. Think about Mom." As I walked out, I heard him pick up the key. The next morning, I got a text from my mother. "He drove the car this morning. Didn't say a word about it, but he drove it." By evening, my father had called Harold Jenkins at Greenscape. 24 hours after that, they had a deal in principle. I watched from a distance, saying nothing as my father signed away the business he'd built over 40 years. He looked smaller somehow, sitting at that conference table. But when he walked out, the keys to my Ferrari still in his pocket, his shoulders were straight. 2 months later, I stood on a makeshift stage in my newly renovated headquarters. Around me were 200 people, my employees, local business leaders, journalists, and family members. My father stood in the back, arms crossed, still uncomfortable in spaces like this. "Today, we're officially launching Horizon Analytics," I announced. "Our mission is to make financial technology accessible to everyone, not just Wall Street firms, and we're proud to be doing it right here in Charleston." Applause filled the room. I continued. "We're also announcing our first local partnership. Horizon is investing $2 million in Greenscape Regional Holdings, the newly formed parent company of several landscaping businesses, including the former Langford Landscaping." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My father's head snapped up. "As part of this investment, we're launching a technology initiative to help traditional service businesses compete in the digital economy. And I'm pleased to announce that Nathan Langford will be heading this initiative as Director of Traditional Industries." The room erupted in applause. I looked directly at my father for the first time. His face was unreadable. Nathan has built something valuable over 40 years. Knowledge that can't be coded into an algorithm. Experience that can't be learned in a classroom. By combining his expertise with our technology, we're not replacing the old with the new. We're building something better than either could be alone. After the presentation, as people mingled and celebrated, my father finally approached me. "You planned this all along," he said. "It wasn't a question. I planned to build something that matters," I replied. The rest just fell into place. He looked around at the buzzing activity, the employees hurrying past with purpose, the sign with my company's name on the wall. "Your name's not on the building," he observed. "Neither was yours," I said. "But everyone knew who built it." For the first time since I was a child, I saw something like respect in his eyes. Not approval, we were beyond that now, but recognition. One builder to another. He held out his hand. I took it. "The Ferrari stays with you," I told him. "Consider it a signing bonus." A hint of a smile crossed his face. "I already sold it, bought a truck instead." He paused and put the rest in your company's stock. 6 months later, I sat in my office overlooking the Cooper River. On my desk was a framed article from the Charleston Business Journal. Local tech firm partners with traditional industries, creating 150 new jobs. My father and I weren't close, probably never would be, but we'd found a different kind of relationship. Once a week, we had lunch to discuss the traditional industries program. He'd started bringing in other business owners, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, men like him who were being left behind by technology. They don't need handouts, he told me during our last meeting. They need tools that make sense for them. And I listened, really listened, because he was right. The partnership with Greenscape had exceeded everyone's expectations. My father's expertise combined with our technology platform had expanded their business across 3 states. The same employees who once worked for him now had stock options and better healthcare. My mother had finally quit her teaching job and was traveling, something she'd always wanted to do but never could afford. Your father actually took a cooking class with me in Italy, she told me, laughing during our weekly call. Can you believe it? Thomas had joined the company as our marketing director. Evan was thriving as COO. We'd hired 30 graduates from local colleges, creating a pipeline of talent that didn't need to leave Charleston for opportunity. As for me, I'd traded proving myself for building something lasting. The $14 million deal that had once seemed like my entire goal was now just the beginning of a much larger story. That evening, as I left the office, I passed the wall where we displayed our company values. At the bottom was a new addition suggested by my father during one of our meetings. Remember whose shoulders you stand on. I walked out to the parking lot where my basic black sedan was parked next to my father's new truck. No luxury cars needed anymore. We both made our points. Driving home along the water, I thought about success. How I'd once defined it as proving my father wrong, and how I now saw it as something we were building together, each in our own way. I'd gotten my revenge, but not how I'd imagined. Not by humiliating him or taking away what he valued. Instead, by creating a future large enough to include his past. By building something neither of us could have built alone, that felt like winning. Not against him, but for both of us.